Mani, of Iranian origin, was the prophet and the founder of Manichaeism, a gnostic religion of late antiquity which was once widespread but is now extinct. Mani was born in near Seleucia-Ctesiphon in Parthian Babylonia, at the time still part of the Parthian Empire. 6 of his major works were written in Syriac Aramaic, and the 7th, dedicated to the Sassanid shahanshah Shapur I, was written in Middle Persian. He died in Gundeshapur, under the Sassanid Empire. Life. This work and other evidence discovered in the 20th century establishes Mani as a historical individual. Mani was born near Seleucia-Ctesiphon, perhaps in the town Mardinu in the Babylonian district of Nahachar. According to other accounts, in the town Abrumia. Mani's father Patik, a native of Ecbatana, was a member of the Jewish Christian sect of the Elsites. His mother was of Parthian descent. Her name is reported variously, among others Mariam. At ages 12 and 24, Mani had visionary experiences of a heavenly twin of his, calling him to leave his father's sect and preach the true message of Christ. In 240–41, Mani traveled to India, where he studied Hinduism and its various extant philosophies. Al-Biruni says Mani traveled to India after being banished from Persia. Returning in 242, he joined the court of Shapur I, to whom he dedicated his only work written in Persian, known as the Shapur I. Shapur was not converted to Manichaeism and remained Zoroastrian. Shapur's successor Hormetes I appears to have continued to patronize Mani, but his successor Bahram I, a follower of the Zoroastrian reformer Kartir, began to persecute the Manichaeans. He incarcerated Mani, who died in prison within a month, in 274 CE. Mani's followers depicted Mani's death as a crucifixion in a conscious analogy to the death of Christ. Al-Biruni says that Bahram ordered the execution of Mani. He was flayed alive and his skin stuffed with straw, was nailed to a cross and suspended over the main gate of the great city of Gundeshapur as a terrifying spectacle for those who followed his teachings. His corpse was decapitated and the head placed on a spike. Bahram also ordered the killing of many Manichaeans. Works. The canon of Mani included 6 works originally written in Syriac, and 1 in Persian, the Shapur I. While none of his books have survived in complete form, there are numerous fragments and quotations of them, including a long Syriac quotation from one of his works, as well as a large amount of material in Middle Persian, Coptic, and numerous other languages. Examples of surviving portions of his works include the Shapur I, the Book of Giants, the Fundamental Epistle, a number of fragments of his Living Gospel, a Syriac excerpt quoted by Theodore Barkoni, and his letter to Edessa contained in the Cologne Mani Codex. Mani also read the book Ash'ang, a holy book of Manichaeism unique in that it contained many drawings and paintings to express and explain the Manichaeist creation and history of the world. Teaching. Mani's teaching was intended to succeed and surpass the teachings of Christianity, Zoroastrianism and Buddhism. It is based on a rigid dualism of good and evil, locked in eternal struggle. In his mid-20s, Mani decided that salvation was possible through education, self-denial, fasting and chastity. Mani claimed to be the Paraclete promised in the New Testament and a last prophet. On what is known of Mani's theology, the following points are made regarding especially Christianity. While his religion was not strictly a movement of Christian Gnosticism in the earlier mode, Mani did declare himself to be an apostle of Jesus Christ, and extant Manichaean poetry frequently extols Jesus and his mother, Mary, with the highest reverence. Manichaean tradition is also noted to have claimed that Mani was the reincarnation of different religious figures including Zoroaster, the historical Buddha, as well as Jesus. Mani's followers were organized in a church structure, divided into a class of elects and/or auditors. Only the electee are required to follow the laws strictly, while the auditors care for them, hoping to become electee in the turn after reincarnation. Christian and Muslim tradition. Late antique Christian accounts. The Christian tradition of Mani is based on Socrates of Constantinople, a historian writing in the 5th century. According to this account, one Syrianos of Saracen, husband of an Egyptian woman, introduced the doctrine of Empedocles and Pythagoras into Christianity. That he had a disciple, Buddhas, formerly named Terebinthus, who traveled in Persia, where he alleged that he had been born of a virgin, and afterwards read 4 books, 1 of mysteries, a 2nd the Gospel, a 3rd the Treasure, and a 4th Heads. While performing some mystic rites, he was hurled down a precipice by a daimon, and killed. A woman at whose house he lodged buried him, took over his property, and bought a boy of 7, named Kubricus. This boy she freed and educated, leaving him the property and books of Buddha's Terebinthus. Kubricus then traveled into Persia, where he took the name of Manes and gave forth the doctrines of Buddha's Terebinthus as his own. The king of Persia, hearing that he worked miracles, sent for him to heal his sick son, and on the child's dying put Manes in prison. Thence he escaped, flying into Mesopotamia, but was traced, captured, and flayed alive by the Persian king's orders, the skin being then stuffed with chaff and hung up before the gate of the city. For this narrative, Socrates gives us his authority. The Disputation of Archelaus, Bishop of Cassia, a work either unknown to or disregarded by Eusebius, who in his history briefly vilifies Manes without giving any of the above details. In the Chronicon of Eusebius, the origin of the sect is placed in the 2nd year of Probus, AD 277. According to Jerome, Archelaus wrote his account of his disputation with Manichaeus in Syriac, whence it was translated into Greek. The Greek is lost, and the work, apart from extracts, subsists only in a Latin translation from the Greek, of doubtful age and fidelity, probably made after the 5th century. By Photius it is stated that Heracleon, bishop of Chalcedon, in his book against the Manichaeans, said the Disputation of Archelaus was written by one Hegemonius, an author not otherwise traceable, and of unknown date. In the Latin narrative, Manes is said to have come, after his flight from court, from Arabian, a frontier fortress, to Cassia, a town said to be in Roman Mesopotamia, in the hope of converting an eminent Christian there named Marcellus, to whom he had sent a letter beginning, Manichaeus, apostle of Jesus Christ, and all the saints and virgins with me, send peace to Marcellus. Quote, in his train he brought 22 youths and virgins. At the request of Marcellus, he debated on religion with Bishop Archelaus, by whom he was vanquished, whereupon he set out to return to Persia. On his way he proposed a debate with a priest at the town of Diodorides, but Archelaus came to take the priest's place, and again defeated him, whereupon, fearing to be given up to the Persians by the Christians, he returned to Arabia. At this stage Archelaus introduces in a discourse to the people his history of this Manes, very much to the effect of the recapitulation in Socrates. Among the further details are these: that Scythianus lived in the time of the apostles, that Terebinthus said the name of Buddhas had been imposed on him, that in the mountains he had been brought up by an angel, that he had been convicted of imposture by a Persian prophet named Parcus, and by Labdacus, son of Mithra, that in the disputation he taught concerning the sphere, the 2 luminaries, the transmigration of souls, and the war of the Principia against God, that Corbicius or Corbicus, about the age of 60, translated the books of Terebinthus, that he made 3 chief disciples, Thomas, Adders, and Hermes, of whom he sent the first to Egypt, and the second to Scythia, keeping the third with him, that the two former returned when he was in prison, and that he sent them to procure for him the books of the Christians, which he then studied, according to the Latin narrative. Finally, Manes on his return to Arabia was seized and taken to the Persian king, by whose orders he was flayed, his body being left to the birds, and his skin, filled with air, hung at the city gate. Medieval Muslim accounts. Mani is described as a painter who set up a sectarian movement in opposition to Zoroastrianism. He was persecuted by Shapur I and fled to Central Asia, where he made disciples and embellished with paintings a chile and another temple called Galbita. Provisioning in advance a cave which had a spring, he told his disciples he was going to heaven and would not return for a year, after which time they were to seek him in the cave in question. They then found him, whereupon he showed them an illustrated book, called Ergank, or Estenkaj, which he said he had brought from heaven. Whereafter he had many followers, with whom he returned to Persia at the death of Shapur. The new king, Hormisdas, joined and protected the sect, and built in Mani a castle. The next king, Bahram of Irans, at first favored Mani, but, after getting him to debate with certain Zoroastrian teachers, caused him to be flayed alive, and the skin to be stuffed and hung up. Thereupon most of his followers fled to India and China.